Phase two is pretty much the exploitation phase. So thinking like an attacker, the attacker would need to exploit whatever type of vulnerability there is in order to gain access to a system or to a server. So in this task, I'm pretty much going to be looking at a brute force attempt on the web server. So got Splunk up. And pretty much going to first off try to figure out some information that'll help me figure out how the attacker was able to brute force into our CMS. So the first question is going to be, what IP address is likely attempting a brute force password attack against I'm really not Batman.com. So we're going to look for IP address. So try to find that IP address. Okay, so I'm ready to do. Source type, I'm going to change that to stream HTTP. Source. I'm just going to check for different source IP. So we get 5. So it's 40.80.148.42. That IP address was used to scan the server. So there's a second IP. I know this is the IP address for the web server. So let's take a look at 23.22. This is the different IP address. So okay, so let me add to it. So 100%, let's see. Did that twice. So I'm just looking for some password attempts or any type of information that will help me. So yeah, this IP. Let me try and we can pick up a see if we get anything from that. Okay, so yeah, now I see it here. So if I look, it's a bunch of stuff. Message username and password do not match, or you do not have an account. So now I can very much see what from source content. I can see a lot of things. So the username, that this is information from that particular IP address. I see that they tried a bunch of ones, but the username was. So we can pretty much confer that this is the correct IP address that attempted the brute force attack, and then we can not only look here and see that there is a pretty much in plain text username and password. This is pretty much like the do not match. This the error message that the attacker got. So, and then we can also look at source content and see that there's a bunch of attempts here. Okay. So that's our IP address. It's gonna be the next question is asking, what was the URI which got multiple brute force attempts? So pretty much from what I understand, the URI is got The URI is pretty much like an internet resource. So for like web pages, images, electronic documents. So that's pretty easy to find the URI because Splunk has a field and it pretty much shows us that this is the URI. Got the most brute force attempts. So if we can see here, it's the only URI path. So I guess that's a good way of knowing. All right, the next question asks, which username was the brute force attempt made? So I think I did see that it's admin. I go back here, I pretty much can see it looks like it's admin. Source content, username is admin. And the password that he tried at that time was Arthur. And this is the Joomla source header. So it's pretty much our URI for the web page. And so this is the username that he attempted. So eventually the attacker was able to get access to the web server. And it's now time to figure out what password was he able to use. So in order to do that, we're gonna have to, so we're gonna keep source stream HTTP. And then we're gonna look for HTTP method. We're gonna change to post it. This is to find the password that successfully granted the user, the attacker, access. So we'll go to source type. Or the method. So HTTP method, we can go post. And I'm gonna add some regular expressions. So we're gonna get this in a table format. Table format. And then expression. It's going to be form data. Form data is pretty much like what the user's typing in. So when you go to a website, let's say I wanted to log into Facebook, like if I want to log into Facebook, if I typed in this information, even though it's not accurate information, it's still gonna take that to the server and It's going to produce, this is a form right here, a form field, because it's asking for information, username, and then this is pretty much like the URL. So that's it, the form data. So then we're going to do a table password. So I want a table with the passwords. Table password. Let's see how that clears things up. And then yes, source count. There's 10,000. Let's see. So I'm going to try one more time. Password. And then it's not showing me the okay, there we go. So there we go, Batman. First one. So pretty much Batman was a password that the admin, well, this attacker used to log into the admin account. So that's how he was able to so once he got the password he was in, and he was able to get it in 412 attempts. So there's 412 passwords that he chose. Bad boy. This is all from the passwords that he tried. And the one he chose was Batman. So with that information, the attacker used an IP address to log into the admin panel. And I think it's important to figure out which IP address he used. So I think I can. So I can view events. Type Batman twice. And this is pretty much like the login form data, login. So this is him successfully logging in after doing the brute force. So this is him logging in. We can view, I'm going to view events, and let's try source IP. That'll pretty much tell us. That's it. 4080.148.42. So that's the IP address the attacker used. So exploitation is pretty much discovering how the attacker was able to get into our CMS and deface, go ahead and do his attack, which was deface the web server. We were able to figure out though how he was able to. So he pretty much did a brute force and found the admin login and password, and he was able to get in. So we were able to find the IP address of the attacker. We saw it took him 412 attempts, and he logged in into the admin account. So he used two different IP addresses. So that brute force he used 23.22.63.114 to brute force. And we were able to notice that from when we looked at the other information. It showed us stuff about attempts, multiple attempts. So that's it.